Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, Intel says it will join Elon Musk's Terafab project with SpaceX, xAI and Tesla to help refactor silicon fab technology.
Plus, Broadcom gains on expanded agreements with Google and Anthropic as alternative technology to NVIDIA builds.
And Bill Ackman looks to make a deal for the world's largest music company, Universal Music Group. We'll have the details.
But we set the context where the markets are still fixated on conflict in the Middle East. We're still all awaiting what happens at 8 p.m. New York time today, a self-imposed deadline by President Trump, and anxiety remains as we wonder what will happen in that time frame. We're currently seeing the market off by 1.5% at the moment. We're down on the Nasdaq 100. Big tech really feeling some of the risk-off environment, and we're seeing Brent crude, of course, climb some 1.3% as it seems as though the conflict continues to intensify. Ed.
The big breaking news of the morning, Intel says in a post on X that it is joining the Terafab project. That is the initiative by SpaceX, xAI and Tesla to build out massive compute or chip capacity. The stock was up almost 5% 1 point earlier in the session. It's now paired those gains to 2%. Tesla is down 4%. There could be other factors behind that. What is going on? What does it mean? Let's get the details with Bloomberg's chip reporter Ian King and Bloomberg Intelligence senior analyst Mandeep Singh. And Ian, I'll start with you. We actually don't know a lot, but tell us what we do know from two posts, one by Lip-Bu Tan, Intel's CEO, and the other by the company itself.
Yeah, I mean, what the company is saying is, look, we've got lots of technology that they need, whether it's packaging, whether it's chip design, whether it's manufacturing technology, and we're just very happy to be part of this project. How exactly they're going to be part of the project, though, isn't clear.
Can you give any illumination, Mandeep, therefore we turn to you, as to what the upside could be? What are your most optimistic, what are your most realistic perspectives of how much this builds Intel's business?
I mean, I look at it this way. You know, Elon Musk wants to build data centers in space, and every other hyperscaler is spending over $100 billion in capex this year to set up terrestrial data centers. So in this case, Elon Musk clearly wants to set up fabs instead of focusing on data centers, investments. And his thing is, I can build a vertically integrated fab that can make chips for the space data centers that he's focused on. And for Intel, it's just another avenue to capture in terms of this build out of the AI infrastructure that we are seeing around us. Clearly, TSMC has a big lead, but I think if he were, like Intel were to focus on space data centers, they could find that opportunity, for growth.
Ian, that's a picture of Elon Musk, I think, down in Santa Clara, shaking hands with Lip-Bu Tan. Seems easy, doesn't it? But as we put in copy in our reporting, the economics of chip making are brutal. You have to get it right. Would you help the Bloomberg Tech audience understand the reality of what Tesla, SpaceX and xAI are proposing to do?
Yeah, I mean, the massive build-out that they're proposing would not be supported by the kind of volumes that they are able to consume right now. It probably doesn't make economic sense for them. But if they're doing that in a partnership, if they're doing that to maybe sell silicon to other people, then maybe the numbers do start to add up. But you've got to flip that the other way and say, well, hold on a minute, what's Intel up to here? Intel really has its own plants that it needs to fill. So if there's some kind of a bridging arrangement where Tesla becomes a customer of Intel, helps give Intel orders, and then that branches out into some kind of partnership in the future where they build plants together, then maybe that's a more logical path and probably safer for both of them.
Mandeep, the world is changing when it comes to those that are at the forefront of compute and those that are consuming it. Tesla designs its own inference chips, for example, current generation AI5 going into AI4, AI5, and then AI6. It's never made its own chips. At the BI team, across all the analysts in the different desks, are you having to kind of remodel where everyone sits in that world going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the ecosystems clearly are determined by which large language model is doing well. I mean, just today we heard about Anthropic reaching $30 billion run rate. That, I think, is favorable to that Anthropic ecosystem that includes Broadcom and TPUs. And look, when it comes to fabs, so far we know everyone is going to TSMC. So it's quite interesting that, Elon Musk wants to develop an alternative to that fab. But as we know, Intel has struggled for so many years in terms of reaching that leading node capacity. So from that perspective, it is a pretty big undertaking, and it requires a lot of capex. I mean, TSMC's capex is north of $50 billion. So what would it take to build a fab, in terms of capex investments?
Can I just say one thing as well, Kara, Mandeep? I'm sorry. I just want to state it, that Terafab is not included in Tesla's 26 capex guide of $20 billion, far beyond what it's ever done. I'm just putting it out there, and I'll keep saying it until the Terafab's built. Kara.
It's been a fascinating bit of perspective from all three of you, actually, because Ed, you're the byline on this story thus far. Ian King, always with all the insight when it comes to Intel. Mandeep, thank you for the intelligence of Bloomberg Intelligence. So look, let's get you more insight now, because Gil Luria has already been putting his reaction to paper. Head of tech researcher at D.A. Davidson. Look, you said the investment bodes well for Intel's turnaround story. Does this really strengthen the balance sheet? How does this look to be boding well?
Yeah, so Intel's been busy in its turnaround. It made a really big step in repurchasing 49% of its Ireland fab back from Apollo. And then you have this morning's announcement with Tesla. Intel has all the most important pieces right now. It's a US-based company with US-based production that makes CPUs and has advanced packaging. These are all things that we need for the future of AI. These are three things that if I said 3 years ago, they wouldn't have mattered that much. And right now, each one of those things is absolutely critical. It's not trivial, though, that Intel will be successful. I think that came up in your conversation with Mandeep. There's a lot of execution ahead. They need to successfully build plants in the US, build fabrication for their next waves of technology, including this big joint venture with Tesla, and then get the yields that make them profitable. As you pointed out, TSMC has been doing this for years with great levels of success, and Intel still loses money on the fab side and doesn't have enough core customers to have that volume quite yet. It's lining up those customers, but it's not quite there yet. And so there's a lot of execution ahead. But in terms of executing on the turnaround, Lip-Bu-Tan's doing a lot to make Intel an important player in the future of AI.
Gil, do you like the idea? Because Lip-Bu-Tan came under some, cynicism, or indeed was beaten up a little bit, even by the administration of the United States, because they didn't really like the way in which he was proposing it as build it and then they will come. He wanted to go more like, I need the customers first, and then I'm going to go out and build it. Is this enough of a customer that they will therefore start to put back onto the R&D, start to refuel the actual manufacturing and build out that they perhaps hit pause on?
If we believe Elon Musk and the numbers he's been talking about, that's as much scale as you're going to get. The numbers that he talks about for xAI, for SpaceX, I mean, we're talking about building in the US now. Elon's talked about having fabrication plants on the moon. So if we are to fulfill all of those and Elon gets what he wants, that's plenty of volume. Let's not forget NVIDIA's an investor in Intel. That's volume. There's still a relationship with Apple. That's a lot of volume. So Intel has positioned itself to have the volumes necessary to bring the customers to the table, to have the volumes necessary to be profitable on the fabrication side. It really is a matter of execution over the next several years to get those customers what they want with the high expectations those customers have. Let's not forget those customers are being served very well by TSMC.
Yeah.
This is volume beyond TSMC, but their expectations are still anchored to what they get from TSMC, which is very high yield.
Can we go nitty gritty? Because Tesla has relationships for its own chip building at the moment, and they lie with Samsung and they lie with TSMC. So how what chips in particular are expecting to be made by Intel, or indeed where do we see the supply reshift?
Well, I'm not sure we got that detail today, but broadly speaking these days, if you look at the broad patterns, the conversation yesterday about Broadcom, Google, and Anthropic, Meta signing up with AMD, OpenAI signing up with AMD and with Broadcom and continuing to use NVIDIA, the approach of all the big players, so the hyperscalers and the big frontier labs, which includes Elon Inc., is to diversify around all of these large chip makers in order to be able to meet this very significant demand that they all have for chips. So they all are still, most of these companies are still mostly reliant on NVIDIA, but they want to rely more on Broadcom, AMD, and Intel, so they're not beholden to NVIDIA, so they have more capacity. What that looks like in terms of mix, I'm not sure they know. I think they're going to move forward and expand as aggressively as they can, and the chip companies that help them the most, that execute the best, will get the volumes. That's why execution is so important right now.
Gil Luria of D.A. Davidson, loving the analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, let's look at shares that aren't gaining at the moment. Apple, significant move, off by almost 5% at the moment. And as Ed would put it, that's a 2 standard deviation move at the moment on this particular stock. Why? Reports out of Nikkei, so over in Japan, that there are issues with the foldable iPhone. Engineering snags, maybe we have to push back test phases for the foldable iPhone, maybe it pushes back production and shipment schedules. That is what the report is saying, citing unidentified people. We're currently off almost 5% on a down market. Meanwhile, coming up, President Trump ramps up his escalations with Iran if a deal isn't reached by tonight. More on that next. This is Bloomberg Tech. President Trump has escalated threats to Iran, warning that, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight if a deal is not reached. For more, Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall joins for more. And it feels as though the rhetoric is dialing up. What's happening behind the scenes, Tyler?
Hey, Caroline. Well, at this point, the indication from the White House is that they are not going to back off of their threat of 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, amid reporting that Iran is now cutting off communication with the U.S. in the wake of President Trump's post on Truth Social. There is reporting that it is unclear if these talks could resume either directly or indirectly ahead of tonight's deadline. Now, the president's post is, of course, raising some legal and humanitarian questions, though experts have said that it will ultimately come down to the size and scope of what actually happens tonight, because under international law, a military is allowed to strike key infrastructure if it, one, contributes to a military operation, this idea of dual use, if a bridge is used to help transport weapons, for example, and two, if civilian harm is minimized. We've already started to see some strikes happening earlier today against military targets, in particular, including on Karg Island, as Karg Island remains absolutely central when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. And yesterday, we got a little bit more clarity from this White House that they do need to see a reopening of that waterway in order to agree to any potential ceasefire deal. We're going to have to wait to see what happens, because in that same post from President Trump, he also said, quote, who knows what will happen? And yesterday he said that he felt that Iran was negotiating in good faith. Caroline, we heard earlier today from Vice President J.D. Vance, who said that he felt confident that the U.S. would get some sort of response from Iran ahead of tonight's 8 p.m. Eastern deadline. But this White House maintains that what happens tonight is going to be on how Iran ultimately responds. And so far, we have only seen this hardline stance taken.
Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall, we appreciate it. Everything from the White House. Meanwhile, big tech stocks, they remain under pressure, yet again, amid the Middle East concerns. This is with a growing chorus on Wall Street actually starts making the case for buying the dip, including Goldman's Peter Oppenheimer. He says the recent pullback is creating more attractive entry points and that tech valuations have now slipped below the broader global market. Let's continue the debate with RBC Bruin Dolphins' Janet Mui, who says, well, last week's equity rebound, you thought it was not one to chase. So do we just stand pat for the time being, Janet?
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for having me. Yes, I think we just need to stay put for now and monitor the situation. I think the reason why we don't chase the rally from last week is simply because the Iran situation is unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. And I think with oil prices staying elevated like this, I think it will put pressure on global growth and, of course, put upside risk to inflation. And at this point, central banks' rate cut agenda is being abandoned. There could be rate hikes going forward. And fiscally speaking, global governments will find it very tough to support consumers in any form because of the fiscal deficit situation. So all in all, I think from a macro perspective, there's still a lot of uncertainty and certainly risk tilted to the downside. So I think it's not really the right moment to chase the last week's rally. And as we are speaking, the markets have seen renewed weakness again because the situation is just so unclear.
How have you been protecting the downside, Janet?
Yeah, so I think we need to think really deeply about the inflation prospect, because if you think about the various scenarios, the path of least resistance is basically elevated oil prices for prolonged period, because even if we see de-escalation, a lot of the energy assets have been destroyed. So we don't expect near-term normalization in terms of oil flows or supply. So inflation being higher in the near term or longer is basically the base case here. So we like energy stock exposure in portfolio to hedge against that risk. And the energy majors, they pay quite good dividends. So that's another attractive point. And we like gold as an inflation hedge, and gold price being down from their highs really provide a relatively good entry point. We also like inflation-linked bonds because that, it can hedge against that high inflation outlook.
To bring it back to technology, which is hard in the current global context, Janet, just at what point do you focus in on fundamental business news? At what point are you looking at the headlines coming from Broadcom expanding its deal? If you're looking at what's happening with Anthropic's run rate and what that means for the rest of the ecosystem, when you're hearing about Intel going in with a Terafab, potentially, of course, of Elon Musk's, does any of that drive companies, investors to want to go and allocate? Or do you think for now you just have to sit back amid the global context, which is one of concern and instability?
I think the two themes can go in parallel. Obviously, the macro risk and the Iran war is front and center, and ultimately that affects sentiment. But we always look at the fundamental drivers as well. And even though I was saying that we're not chasing the rally, we have to understand that there has been a lot of heavy discount in selected high quality growth tech stocks. Some of that in software, some of them in the picks and shovels play of the AI infrastructure play. I'm not gonna name names, but there's some really attractive discount happening in the past couple of months. So we are closely monitoring that situation. So I think, at the moment, we're keeping a bit higher cash level than normal. So certainly if there are further discounting because of the volatility in markets, we'll certainly be finding opportunities to add further to those positions.
How much are they American? How much are they international?
For the tech sector exposure, most of that is still American exposure, because if you look at the tech AI picks and shovels play, which remain our favorite, because that area we think is a very strong growth driver, irrespective of whether some software is going obsolete or not, because they are the fundamental layer of the tech, the AI build out. So most of that is American exposure, and of course we have some Asian exposure name, but I would say most is still American.
Janet Mui of RBC Brewin Dolphin. Tough to talk just stocks and tech, but you managed to do it for us. We really appreciate it. Meanwhile, coming up, Bill Ackman sets his eyes on Universal Music Group with $65 billion deal. More on that next. This is Bloomberg Tech. Time now for Talking Tech, and first up, aerospace startup Hermes has raised $350 million in funding round, boosting its valuation to $1 billion. The Atlanta-based company plans to build an unmanned fighter for the U.S. military, able to fly at Mach 3, or 3 times the speed of sound. Now, Hermes is set to use the new capital to build 2 more planes and ramp up the manufacturing capacity. Plus, Blackstone-backed QTS drew about $12.5 billion for a debut high-grade bond sale that will help fund a Microsoft data center. That's according to sources. The bond sale is the latest in a wave of borrowing tied to new AI infrastructure build-outs. And data center builder Firmus Technologies has raised $505 million, valuing the Australian startup at $5.5 billion. Now, the round was led by Coatue Management with participation from NVIDIA. Firma says that the cash will go towards the rapid deployment of AI hardware based on forthcoming NVIDIA tech, but over in the Asia-Pacific region. Ed.
Well, hello again. Shares of Universal Music Group. This is the Amsterdam trading up 12%, on track for their biggest day ever, having opened up 24%. Proposal from Bill Ackman for Universal Music Group, the world's largest music company, which houses the likes of Taylor Swift, Drake, and Sabrina Carpenter. It is a complicated potential deal. Bloomberg's Benoit Berthelot covers European media and entertainment, joins us now. It is complicated. Unsurprising, you have Ackman, deal, and music. It's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal. Just give us the very basics of what the proposal is.
So basically, it's a plan to merge Universal Music Group with a blank check company that Bill Ackman has created for this. It's a merger that would give a valuation of 56 billion euros to Universal. The cash component of the deal is about 9 billion. And basically what he wants to achieve is to relocate the listing from Amsterdam to New York as a primary listing. He just made a call to investor, and Ackman said that it would make more sense for Universal to be listed in the US, given that the operational center, the decision making is made in the US on the East Coast. And so that's his main point really for this deal. And he said it would make more sense for analysts who cover the peers of Universal to cover the company being listed in the US.
What's interesting is that, of course, this has got some skepticism. He can talk to investors all he likes, but there's really one key investor he needs to convince who sat over in France as a billionaire. Talk to us about, well, Vincent Bolloré and whether he's going to go along with it.
Yes, so he's really the main shareholder, the largest of Universal. He has about 18% through Bolloré, his own holding, and he has another 10% through a company he controls. That's the media conglomerate Vivendi, that Universal has been spun off actually a few years ago and listed in Amsterdam. So he has a say, and Ackman was really clear today on the call that he has to win over Bolloré for this deal to go through. He also said that Bolloré said to him that the deal was intriguing and music to his ears. We haven't heard from Bolloré exactly on this, so we are waiting for his reaction really.
Thank you, Benoit. It's great to have you on live from Paris. We appreciate it. Coming up, Samsung earned a far stronger than expected leap in profit. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech. I want to take a broad look at technology stocks through the Nasdaq 100. We are off session lows, but the story is technology stocks down, oil higher. Doubts about a U.S. Iran deal for a ceasefire. There is an 8 p.m. Eastern time deadline set by the president for Iran to agree to ceasefire terms, and that is what the market is digesting. Within that index and within the technology sector, specific movers, we've been over them. Intel is again off its session highs. It had been up almost 5% after announcing it's joining Elon Musk's Terafab project. You can recap that on the podcast. And then Broadcom, it's up almost 4%, off session highs, but it has an expanded deal with Google for TPUs, and the mainstay of that is Anthropic and Anthropic's expanded use and supply of TPUs. Let's get more on that deal, what it means for the world of AI. Bloomberg Shireen Ghaffari is with us. And you and I broke the story originally, right, that Anthropic would use TPUs to begin with. It started with 1 gigawatt. Now, 3 times that. Give us the basics of what we learned and then some more stuff about Anthropic's financials.
Right. So this is a major expansion. It's going to be several gigawatts. And the context there is that the demand for Anthropic products has really shot through the roof in the past few months with the popularity of its Claude Code coding agent, as well as now as their head of sales recently told us, their Claude Cowork agent, which is more for general activities beyond just coding. So as they're seeing very, very strong enterprise growth, they're going to need to ramp up that compute.
And what's extraordinary has been the ramp up in their business, not only because of the context that they were having a fallout, a very public spat that's still ongoing with the Pentagon right now, but it seems actually that businesses are still coming to them for their technology.
That's right. As Anthropic said in its complaint in the lawsuit against the U.S. government, that feud with the Pentagon is very serious. And the company did say it put them at risk to lose customers and potentially billions in revenue. But at the same time, the product growth has been, remarkable. And it seems like it hasn't, at least for now, stopped them from continuing to see this very strong revenue growth on enterprise.
Sri, through your reporting, I've learned about adversarial model distillation. And you've been talking in this report about Anthropic cooperating with OpenAI and Google, and historically 3 companies that may have differing views. Explain the cooperation, what it's trying to counter, and the basic concept of adversarial model distillation.
Yes. So what that means, and it sounds very complex, but really it's just the idea that an older AI model can be used to then train or teach a newer model, and that the output of that original AI model is what's being used to train the new one. And this happens all the time, and it's not controversial if it's being done by a company that's developed their own software to train the next generation of software. But it is controversial when, as we're seeing, foreign firms in China and elsewhere are starting to essentially, what the U.S. companies are saying is sort of rip off or copy their product and then put the Chinese product out there for free as an open weight model. And so that's what the companies are working together on. It's rare that you see Anthropic and OpenAI, fierce rivals, and Google cooperating. But on this front, as we reported, they are sharing information about how to detect when firms, especially in China outside the U.S., are using this distillation technique to essentially copy the output of their models.
Frontier Model Forum that they set up. Shireen Ghaffari, fantastic reporting across all things AI and Anthropic. We appreciate it. Meanwhile, let's turn attention to the chips that are needed. Samsung reporting a 755% leap in quarterly profit to hit a record. It's driven by robust demand for those AI chips. Joining us now, Bloomberg's Yukyung Lee is here with us. An extraordinary demand for high bandwidth memory. And what's so interesting is how quickly they've turned the tides on what had been a negative narrative for them.
Absolutely, that's right. So this quarter, from January to March, Samsung reported preliminary earnings that was 8 times higher from the previous year, and it was higher than the high expectations. And in just one quarter, Samsung actually earned more than what it made in an entire year of 2025. And this was a preliminary earnings, so we don't have divisional breakdowns between chips, TVs, and phones. But on April 30th, the company is going to have a full earnings release and also hold a conference call.
You can put some numbers behind how much contribution the memory story and memory chips have made to that blowout prelim report.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was definitely the memory story. And the analysts from the CLSA and Morgan Stanley, they estimate that 90% of its operating profit of $38 billion probably came from its memory chip division. Now, we don't have that exact detail from the company yet because this was the preliminary results, but it seems like almost like 90% of that quarterly earnings have come from the crucial memory department.
And interestingly, shares fell, maybe some profit taking, maybe risk off with what's happening with the war in Iran. Bloomberg's Yukyung Lee, thank you very much. With ARM's plans of selling its own chips for the first time, the company is trying to pull off its biggest shift yet, with Morgan Stanley today downgrading the company to equal weight on execution risk concerns. From smartphones to data centers, the company is chasing a $100 billion market. Tom McKenzie sat down with CEO Rene Haas for a deep dive specifically for Bloomberg Tech Europe.
We are shifting away from being largely known for smartphones to being around the cloud and AI data centers, where in a few years, that's our largest business by far. And in 5 years, it'll be orders of magnitude larger than what we do in smartphones.
The next episode of Bloomberg Tech Europe airs this Friday at 8:30 a.m. in London, or you can watch it on the terminal, YouTube, and on our video hub at bloomberg.com/video. Karen.
Go watch. Meanwhile, coming up, stay tuned for Leo Suzanne from Eclipse, joining us to talk about backing startups powering America's reindustrialization efforts. They've been at it for years. They've got a big new raise to announce. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Enthusiasm for backing startups, that's Caroline, that's me. Backing startups focused on Western reindustrialization is showing no sign of slowing down. The latest example, venture firm Eclipse, has raised $1.3 billion across two funds to back companies building, quote, the next era of physical industries. Think robotics, manufacturing, and energy startups, among others. Let's bring in Lior Susan, the founder and CEO of Eclipse. And this takes, total funds way up there. Super interesting, the capital commitment to this domain, this vertical. And I thought a good place to start, Lior, is talk a little bit about the LPs, where the money is coming from and how much push you are getting to participate in the deal flow in that reindustrialization movement.
Ed, great to be here, and thanks for having me. We raise capital from U.S.-based LPs. It's a nonprofit organization, university endowments, foundation, hospital system, etc. We started the firm 11 years ago with one goal. And our belief that the U.S. economy needs to grow much faster, north to 5%. And it's going to happen only from physical industries because they are combining 85% of the world GDP. And to tell you the truth, we kind of forget to build hard companies in this country. And we are super excited to be back in the market with capital to support founders and operators.
You've grown the firm as well in the last couple of years. Joe Fuff came from T. Rowe Price. You have Jitem Bell, Charlie Mwangi, who are alumni of Rivian and Tesla in Charlie's case. What's the strategy with these two new funds, and how are you going to use your talent bench to get out there, do something interesting?
Yeah, we don't think ourselves as a venture capital necessarily or growth capital. We call ourselves operators with capital because we believe that in order to build companies that manufacturing chips and building rockets and doing mining, it's required a different model. And you need an operators that was on the other sides to support those founders along the journey. And, I'm joking with my friends that I used to say that this is the best time to build in this country from Henry Ford or Carnegie or post World War II. And I actually changed my quote to this is the best time to build in this country, period. And we have now the 5 forces aligned, what we call internally at Eclipse: capital, policy, technology, talent, customer demand. And those forces was not aligned in this country for us to build those type of companies. They were only aligned in one other country that compete with us, and it's China.
It's interesting that you say policy is aligned, and we've just been out particularly thinking about defense tech, Lior. And for many, yes, the signals are all there, demand is being said, but how much money is actually being allocated by the government to startups right now? How much do you need to help fill that gap with some of your follow-on funding?
Yeah, I'm actually sitting right now in a hotel in Washington, D.C., going to talk on stage with Jamie Dimon on JP Morgan SRI around Defense Production Act. And I cannot remember someone like me is visiting so often Washington, D.C., and have the CEO of the largest bank in the world allocating $1.5 trillion of JP Morgan to support those businesses. So it's not only we need to do it in order to protect democracy, that of course should be the #1 goal. The second thing is there is a significant increase of customer demands by the US governments and others, as well capital. And probably the most interesting part is the talent. The best people in the world right now wants to build companies in physical industries.
Look, you've raised $1.3 billion in total, and it's divided between where you're going to be allocating in growth stage. We can understand some of the winners you've already got. We've seen a phenomenal portfolio, an economy you say you've built. But where's exciting at the very early stage? Where do you want to be going out and looking for? Where does the puck move?
Yeah, Caroline, it's interesting. As you can imagine, I get that question a lot of like, okay, you raise new capital, which industries you're going to invest in? In some way, we talked about defense, building chips, building fabs, and doing mining, building batteries 10 years ago. So the reality, physical industries are not new things. They've been here for so long, and they are combining 85% of the world GDP. And I think bringing those digital tools that we are all so familiar from Silicon Valley, anything from physical AI now to LLMs and others, the latest and greatest in robotics, and apply them to the physical world, you basically are going to create the largest companies in the world. I mean, you just literally in your show talked about Samsung beating earnings. You talked about Anthropic, Google chip. You talked about my friends Rene Haas from ARM moving to a full stack. Everything that is interesting right now is happening in physical industries.
You've done some really interesting deals. So I think about, for example, also spun out of Rivian. You took it out of Rivian early and wrote quite a large check. You've used similar mechanisms, some Scaringe spin-off, some others. Do you have a different way of doing things? Could we see a similar spin-off type deal out of this fund?
Yeah, I remember I got the first phone call, I think, from one of our LPs in 2018, and he was like, Lior, why the heck you're building a company? You're supposed to invest. And I'm like, hey, I'm an operator. I like to build companies. I'm not going to stop building companies. And I think, what you're seeing, Ed, is the model of how you build companies is shifting as well.
Yeah.
Because just based on Caroline, great questions on the defense is you need scale out of the gate. So if you're going to take the traditional seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, it's just too slow. And if there is an asset that I can spin out, if there is a talent that I can take, if there is a customer, I can build a company for that demand. Right. As an operators with capital, we have a full flexibility.
Lior, it was great catching up with you. Lior, Suzanne, thank you. Congratulations, CEO of Eclipse there and founder. Coming up, we've got more venture discussions to have. We speak with FPV managing partner Wesley Chan on the evolution of AI investing. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Not all AI winners look like AI companies at first glance. Wesley Chan has made a career betting on exactly that idea, backing firms like Canva, which has become one of the most widely used AI design platforms. Wesley Chan, FPV managing partner, joins us now, and you're in town for Human X, which yes. I'll be running over there shortly to speak to Anthropic's Mike Krieger. But that's kind of interesting, like Lior Susan of Eclipse was just talking about that. Yeah. They look at those different domains, how they'll be impacted by AI. I guess for you, a little more focused on software and how that might be impacted by AI in a positive way.
I think software is one area, but we focus on so many different areas, too. We have a company called Formation Bio that's a drug discovery and development company, and they focus on development. It's the only company we know of that's using AI to predict clinical trial results. They pick drugs out, they buy drugs, and they figured out using AI that a knee drug that will regrow cartilage in your knee to prevent knee replacements will make it through clinical trial. And so they're taking it through right now. It literally does regrow cartilage in your knees, and it's going to prevent knee replacements. And think about this, like friends that are skiers, friends that are runners can get rid of having that pesky knee problem when their cartilage goes. And AI found this drug, and they're helping it predict through clinical trials. So that's what we invest in, things like that.
Wesley, would you mind to reflect a little bit on Canva? When we've spoken to various members of the leadership team, they're adding products, right? That the offering is widening, and it's through AI. I think that's a pretty fair summary of how they'd put it. But they are growing and getting later stage and later stage. Just track the journey.
Yeah, I invested in Canva 13 years ago and led their Series A. And most people think that Canva is a design company. And the amazing thing is Canva is an AI company today. It is. I just saw a report, Mel told me this, that Canva is the third most accessed way people access AI. And if you think about it, every person under 35 is using Canva today, and that's how they interact with AI. ChatGPT is number 1, Google's number 2, Canva's number 3. And I just used it the other day to go create a presentation. I said, I want to go make this presentation for one of my companies. I want to tell the story about how they're changing the world of accounting. And I used Canva to sort of think through that presentation and use the AI tools to create that presentation. It's incredible, right? So Canva has distribution, and that's sort of the biggest place where people are accessing AI today.
Well, what about distributing to a wider democratized set of investors, Wesley? You've backed it from early days, but everyone wonders when IPOs are really going to get going.
Oh, that's up to Mel. We all want her to IPO, and we all want her to do very, very well. But when Mel decides that that's the right time, we will all cheer her on and support her and help her ring the bell.
And so when we're thinking about those liquidity moments, you're then thinking about how you allocate recently raised funds into the next generation of Canvas. You're looking at how you're growing future needs, but where are your limits? Where is it that you catch attention right now? Because it feels as though AI is disrupting every single industry group at a rate that we just cannot really comprehend.
Yeah, it's incredible how it's affecting everything. We just did a company called Strand Therapeutics that uses AI to predict how to create cancer drugs using mRNA. and to help, cure versions of cancer that, we used to kill people. It's incredible, right? And so, companies like that. We have another company in Veda that's found multiple drugs. Their next drug that they're developing, and they use AI to figure out how to find drugs out of natural ingredients.
Wesley, can I jump in?
Yeah.
There's a lot of biotech here. There's a lot of medical application. Why are you the right person to seek out which of these startups in the medical area is the right one? I mean, your background is unique, and it's very much deeply intertwined with Google and with what we think of as software.
Yeah, when I was one of the founding partners of Google Ventures, and one of the great things is that Google has put billions of dollars into the healthcare companies and medical companies and life science companies, and I got to help start that team. So I've been doing it for 16 years. And then we can find these great companies like Inveda or Strand. It's such a non-obvious use of AI, right? Everybody's talking about AI for presentations or AI for legal or AI for whatever else, and we're thinking about it, going, how do we cure life-threatening diseases using AI? And that's a very non-obvious contrarian insight.
These companies, where geographically are they concentrated?
They're everywhere in the world. That's the beauty. Inveda is in Boulder, Colorado. Strand is in Boston. Formation is in New York. So we don't care where the company is as long as we're working on something that changes the world significantly.
What about globally, Wesley? How are we faring, U.S. ecosystem versus everywhere else?
A lot of people talk about China, but, all of the companies that we're working with are using U.S. models and using, the models behind that we're developing here. So I think the U.S. still has a fantastic lead, and, we're heavily invested here in the U.S. We have a few global companies. Canva's obviously in Australia.
Right.
But, they're also using some of the models developed in the U.S. They're using their own model that they're building in Australia as well with a team they bought called Leonardo.ai. And, I think you see this talent everywhere in the world.
Just if we could, just ending a little bit on HumanX, your reflection of the first 24 hours, it was very interesting to be there last night. I was on stage with Dr. Fei-Fei Li. People very engaged with what she had to say about world models as opposed to language models. What do you want to get out of this?
I think that there's such an exposure to so many people's ideas. Like no one sat there and thought that on the mobile phone, and we go back to mobile phone 10 years ago when I started investing, right? No one sat there and said we can use a mobile phone to book a car.
Right.
And if you think about what AI will be 10 years from now, you don't know what the heck it's going to do, right? It might cure cancer, it might go do something. The imagination's wonderful, and HumanX is bringing all those people together to figure out where we can use AI for things that we never imagined 10 years ago.
Wesley Chan of FPV Ventures, thank you very much. The crew of Artemis II is on their way home. The 4 astronauts broke the record for distance traveled by humans into deep space, 252,756 miles, and saw the far side of the lunar surface with their own eyes. At around 6:43 p.m. New York time Monday, the Orion spacecraft slipped behind the moon and out of radio contact with Houston. This was the moment just before.
To all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Houston copies. We'll see you on the other side.
After about 40 minutes, the Orion capsule re-established contact.
Houston, we have you the same, and it is so great to hear from Earth again.
The crew has been sharing their lunar observations with NASA, received a congratulations from President Trump, and witnessed a solar eclipse. It's the closest humans have been to the moon in more than 50 years, Kara.
Extraordinary. And look, it's the closest they've been. They want to get even closer. And this is why this mission, in many ways, is sort of a dress rehearsal of sorts. Like, what are we hearing about the science, the way in which we're going to get people back on it?
Yeah, early as 2028, to get a human or astronaut landing mission. And the dress rehearsal, because it tests the Orion spacecraft, the SLS launch system. That's why we decamped to Kennedy Space Center last week.
I mean, it's been emotional and very reflective of these astronauts in many ways, but there's still more days to go.
Yeah, there is a geopolitical context of a race against China who want to get to the moon in 2030. But for these 3 American astronauts and 1 Canadian, it's a feat of human engineering and human ability. And the world was watching, millions of them on the live feeds last night.
And they'll continue to do so. Meanwhile, that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Tech Ed.
Yeah, a lot to recap, a lot of breaking news, a lot in the markets with war in Iran and that Intel Terafab story. Recap on the pod. You know exactly where to find it. This is Bloomberg Tech.